What's up, Buffalo Bill fans? First day of rookie minicamp is in the books. Definitely some pretty interesting Bills news, noteworthy things in the last 48 hours, if you will. First, I'll start with rookie minicamp, then I'll get to some comments Brandon Bean made the day before. Uh, it followed the news that broke last night about Derek Anderson calling it a career. He said he was done. Apparently, everything that came out today, Derek Anderson had informed the team a couple of weeks prior that he probably wasn't coming back. So he had been leaning towards retirement. This was nothing new, and it all ties in with the Bills pretty much jumping on Tyree Jackson pretty early in the undrafted free agent process. He was the first guy reported, I think, around the league. I mean, it was one of the very few. Um, at least you know how those signings roll in pretty hot and heavy after the draft is over. I mean, it used to be you didn't really hear about those signings till midweek. Now you hear about them. Boom, they're just in. That's how much the information machine has evolved in the last decade or so. But Tyree Jackson's addition now seems a lot more integral as a third quarterback, a developmental quarterback, a guy who could be that quintessential third quarterback, a developmental guy. He could either be on the practice squad or on the roster, depending on how he plays. His style of play is pretty much in concert with Josh Allen's. I mean, he's a big guy. He's bigger than Josh Allen. He doesn't have a better arm than Josh Allen, but he's got a damn good arm, and he's pretty athletic. His motion does get a little long sometimes. He's obviously got a lot of things to work on still. He's pretty raw as quarterbacks go, but he's a rookie. He's just had his first mini camp practice. But he is familiar with the weather and anything that Buffalo environment will throw at him. Not that that's always an issue. I know a lot of fans get pissed off about that, and I do too, because I think that's just a misnomer, a stigma that's ridiculous. I've seen other places get just as much inclement weather, if not more, than Buffalo. But his ad seems a lot more interesting now than it ever was before. He's going to play a ton of football. He's going to get a ton of reps. He's going to play a ton of football. You're going to see him a lot in these preseason games. So it's a good thing that they have that new performance center all up and running with all those different amenities as per, rehabilitation and rehab, so his arm will be in good shape to do all that, because he's going to really get a lot of work in the next 4 months. So it'll make it interesting to watch. It wouldn't be, I like Derek Anderson. I like what he brought to the table. There was some interesting points brought up about a coaching staff ad. They kind of forget about those ads. They had Ken Dorsey, pretty much Ken Dorsey and Derek Anderson are one and the same. They both came from Carolina, spent a long time together. The Bills really they did have a quarterback coach, and I thought Dave Culley did a good job for what he was, but he had never been a quarterback coach before. Now that they have a guy that played the position at a very high level in college, played not as well in the league, but is known as a technician, didn't have no kind of physical arm talent whatsoever. If you remember Ken Dorsey's playing career, he had a noodle for an arm, but did try it in the league with the Browns a little bit with the 49ers, didn't go far, and transitioned to a coach, and he's been was with Cam Newton. So now Josh Allen has that to lean on. Tyree Jackson has that to lean on. Matt Barkley, so that helps that room a little bit more, and the reps get a lot more uniform now, where Josh as the one is going to get 75 to 80% of the reps as a starting quarterback, and then the two gets anywhere between 25 to 20, and then the third team guy is on scout and maybe 5 to 10 percent of the reps, if that, mostly with special teams guys. Excuse me. That was pretty much the most interesting thing that came down in the last 24 hours. It was pretty kind of like, wow. for us, but from what they had said, it's something that they had seen coming and got out in front of, and thankfully so. And look, I not that it's worth anything. I thought he was a draftable player, big physical guy with a huge arm that can run like that, as opposed to a guy like, I don't know, a Gardner Minshew, uh, Trace McSorley, who are kind of, smaller guys. They don't have the physical ability or arm talent that Kyler Murray has, if you will, but they're not near as mobile either. So they really have a niche. They're just kind of like little engines that could. So I'd rather take a chance on a guy that's like this. The other guy I thought would have been good was Jake Dolegata. He's also a Buffalo area high school, went to a very small college because he broke his wrist, but he ended up signing with the Bengals. But here, they have Jackson, and the only quarterback I could think of that was ever bigger was Dan McGuire, who was actually Mark McGuire's brother. This guy was huge. He was like 6'8". He was a first-round draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks a long time ago, back when they were in the AFC. A lot of people don't know that the Seahawks were in the AFC. A lot of the younger crowd don't. Yeah, the AFC West, and their big rival was the Raiders. And he was it was the 16th overall. He was a first-round draft pick. Never really had much of a career at all. Just a big guy who just threw it. Think of, just Brock Osweiler, but they don't run 4.5. So hopefully Tyree can really parlay this into something interesting. And I look at him as a physical talent. I see a lot more arm ability and physical, mobility with the legs than E.J. Manuel. E.J. Manuel was drafted in the first round, 16th overall, and this kid they got as an undrafted free agent, and I see a better physical talent. So, wow, that's saying something. And sorry to kick dirt on E.J., but I see something. That was a long time ago, not to reopen all wounds, but I think this kid is a lot more promising as a prospect than E.J. ever was. Easy for me to say now. We all know what E.J. is and what he was, but just from the optics, if they were both rookies, I would say Tyree Jackson is that and then some. Okay, but on to the rest. Ed Oliver was as advertised, and he should be. This is a camp that there's no pads. It's mainly a passing camp. No contact really, just guys working on bare bones install, just enough to see how they move. That's essentially what this camp is about. They just want to make sure everybody can move, everybody is what they thought they were, or maybe some surprises come out, no disappointments, knock on wood, no injuries. That's always important, right? I always got to make sure I do that when I do these little vids. And from everything I heard, everybody came out clean. Ed Oliver was as advertised in terms of his movement skills, his ability as a physical freak, that he stood out amongst them all. And granted, he's playing with guys that are probably never going to play an NFL down of football. It's just the way of it with these camps. There's mainly just bodies brought in. Those 36 guys, I believe, signed by the Bills. Maybe one or two pop out of that group. They have 3 open roster spots right now. Maybe they keep those open for veterans or something like that. Guys they can pick up, because not that the Bills are going to get any comp picks. I don't think they really thought about that too much going into this offseason. The team needed so much depth, and they hit a lot of depth in free agency. And I think even some of those guys aren't going to make the team once they start cutting it down in September. So mainly I focus on the undrafted free agents. I really got, since I kind of knew who those guys were prior, but until you get an official list from the team, because sometimes guys, flip script midstream and they go to another team because they get more money, more upfront money. Different things happen with those guys. It's not a draft pick. They're essentially free agents, so they can kind of do what they want. And I saw the 2 linebackers stuck out to me, Dobson, because he had an amazing, really good, I believe it was either his junior or sophomore year. I'm not sure if it was his junior or sophomore year. The last year he had, not this just past season, but the year prior, he really had a good season at Texas A&M. It was really, really impressive. And he's pretty he's a downhill linebacker, and he can move, 4 or 5 guy. Um, Pretty good in coverage. Is a striking tackler. He doesn't seem to miss many tackles at all. He gets to guys, they go down, and that's what you need, and that's what McDermott likes in his defense linebackers who can run, cover ground, and tackle people. And you look at the other linebacker, they got Juwan Fogy, I believe it, very small school. The guy moves like a safety. Granted, again, small school, but still, he moves like a safety. Some of the interceptions he made were that of a corner. Amazing, great hand skills for a guy like that size that plays a linebacker. When he puts his hands on a football, he catches it, and even some of the run after he intercepts it, it's pretty nice too. He gives up 6 interceptions last year, which is nuts. And I look at those two guys and I say they have a chance to make this team, because you look at what's in front of them. Granted, they drafted Voshan Joe, and I thought he was the same ilk, a guy who could run, striking tackler, cover ground. Once he gets to people, they go down. I mean, he diagnoses and hits it right away as a linebacker, and that's what you need. You need to be very instinctual. You can't teach instincts in this game. Full speed game like football at the NFL level. It's just, you just can't do it. The linebackers need to be instinctual. I think of a guy like Kelvin Shepard. He had no instincts whatsoever, and he had some physical talent, but his instincts made him look just so slow and labored and late, and just was never there when he needed to. And then you think of a guy like Kiko Alonso, who's just recklessly aggressive, who has good instincts, but just throws in he's a dirty player. So that you have to strike a balance there. There really needs to be a balance that's struck at that position. And I think of the guys at linebacker who are in front of Fogy and Dodson and Joseph, and it's late guys like Lacey, guys like Julian Stafford. And, those are just guys who've been in the league. They play special teams. They don't give you much from the position in terms of a down out player. So there's a chance there that they can make this team, and I would really I wouldn't mind that whatsoever, because I think they'll play special teams. They can hopefully develop at linebacker if need be. Hopefully not, but you never know what could happen. So those two guys I look at. Everybody looks at the receivers, given the fact they didn't draft one, and that seems to bode well for the guys they have on the roster. Everybody points to Duke Williams as a guy like that, and he was pretty pointed today when he spoke. He was like, "Look, I've been at the bottom." He played big time college football, and said, "Look, I cherish this opportunity. I'm going to take it very, very seriously." And he was very, very serious when he spoke to the media today about what he wanted to accomplish in this camp and going forward. And he said as long as he's there, he's going to play through and to the whistle. And that's a really good. He looked very, very, very serious when he was speaking to the media today. So he's a guy to watch out for. Even everybody points to David Sills. He has a very interesting story. I'm sure everybody knows the story. He had that crazy, being recruited and committed, but never went through as a 13-year-old, Lane Kiffin thing, and then, tried to be a quarterback, and when he got hurt, he could no longer do it, messed up his throwing motion, and he could never recover properly. It's a whole crazy story, and he's basically been playing wide receiver for not too long. So we'll see where that goes. He's a very slim guy. It's like, He's 6'3", 210, but he's not the same 6'3", 210 as, it's everybody carries their weight different. Everybody's bone structure is different. He's just very narrow framed. It's just a very he doesn't look as big as he is, but he's a very nice smooth catcher. Not going to give you much in the return game. Not going to really. I think he'll have problems with the physicality, being jammed. He's wiry, but he's sudden. He really is sudden. When he runs his routes, he creates some good separation. He's in and out of his cuts quick. He's decisive, and he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be this year's or the last few years Brandon Riley. I just really Bills fans seem to attach themselves to just certain guys from my history, being a fan of this team and observing what other Bills fans do. I can just tell he's gonna be Brandon Riley clone, if you will, especially at a position where Bills fans really wanted the team to add a player, and I wouldn't have been against it either. I mean, this team was pretty up against it at the position, but and then there's Nick Easley, and there's a guy like I look at. I mean, he played against much tougher defenses at Iowa, and not a very big time passing school. Granted, they did bump out Noah Fant and T.J. Hawkinson. He really, to me, like he looks like you could tell why Brian Daboll would be like, I want that guy. Like you watch him play, he reminds you of that New England-ish slashing slot wide receiver. Like back in the day, you had Ricky Frohl, you had Walsh from Minnesota. You had those type of guys. It wasn't, as the league wasn't as proliferated with those type of guys now. And the Bills bring in Cole Beasley, and now you have this kid. He's, could definitely help in the return game. He can play inside or out. He's very, very physical. He's a physical guy. Like, he blocks his ass off, and he's more sudden than quick and fast. He just seems to think he shocks people. I don't know what it is. He's not a wow athlete, but he just seems to find a way to get open, and he catches the ball. He makes some pretty great adjustments to the ball, and he's tough. He's definitely a tough ass. So I think, but see where I think he has a little bit of an edge is I think he can help in the return game. I think he's a guy who could help in the return game, the kicking game in terms of coverage. So I give him a bit of an edge over Stills in that regard. But who knows? That's why they're gonna go through these camps, go through preseason, go through training camp, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But those are the guys I look at as having the best shot of making the team out of the undrafted free agents, because I don't think anybody else really is going to have much of a chance. The lineman, the offensive lineman they signed, the kicker, maybe Cam Lewis, he definitely looks like a guy who's destined for the practice squad. The UB corner. So, I think Tyree Jackson is the same thing. He's either going to be on the roster as the 3, or he would be to the practice. It all depends on how he plays to the practice squad, and they always have a chance to keep him by putting him on the 53 if somebody else tries to sign him, and they definitely want to keep him. So it's going to be an interesting few months, and there's so many things that happen. Another guy comes available and they pick him up on waivers, and this now makes this guy expendable. So, and we're all going to develop attachments to a certain few guys. It's just the way it is. And some guys, they look good in these camps. They look, oh wow, until there's contact and there's pads, and then everything changes. Everything changes, and certain guys aren't as, like Cam Lewis was a guy like that. He always seemed to just wow people in these camps, and then when the pads came on and people were pushing him around, he never could pull through. So there you have it. I mean, there's 2 more days of this, and then they finally, I think reconvene a week or 2 from now and have the whole team together, and that's where you get to see a little bit more of an interesting mix as to where guys are and aren't, and that'll just evolve over time. Particularly the offensive line is where I'm going to be looking at the most, because I want to see who the 5 guys are that are going to be lining up in front of Josh Allen. We just know where Morse is going to be. We assume Dawkins is going to be left tackle, and everything else is TBD, right? So we'll see how that shakes out, because that's going to be really, really interesting. To Brandon Beane's comments on the Tim Graham show, which were, whoa, and it's something I've been saying myself. I don't need him to be gone, but it just makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense. Brandon Beane asked, and this is the great thing about Brandon Beane, McDermott doesn't really give you much. He's very guarded with his words. He'll tell you things underline. You really got to listen. Like, he has his way of getting things across without being strong about them. And when he does say something strong, that sticks out. But Brandon Beane, and Graham kind of led him a little bit, and he bit. It was like, whoa. He really had to kind of, backtrack mid-word, and it was like, oh, it really stuck out when he was asked about running backs, and he began to wax poetic about Frank Gore, wax poetic about Devin Singletary. I mean, these are guys who are they're going to be on this roster. Those two guys are going to be on the 53-man roster. Make no mistake about it. And then you look at a guy like Sonoris Perry, who everybody's writing off. He's led 2 different teams in special teams tackles and coverage, and you're going to, just look where this team was. And those units last year, they were god-awful, and I'm not advocating for it. I had a comment in my last video where it was like, oh, you need guys who can help you from the line of scrimmage. You don't need a team. I'm not advocating for a team full of special teamers, but every team wants to have anywhere between 4 to 5 guys that's who they are, that's what they do predominantly. Lorenzo Alexander was a guy like that, and he got more opportunities because Shaq Lawson was hurt, and he shined. But he was predominantly a special teams player for a long time. That's why he was brought to Buffalo, to back up Shaq Lawson. Shaq's shoulder was hurt, so he got a lot more run at outside linebacker. And he flourished in that role. Remember, they cut Manny Lawson that offseason, mainly because of that reason and some other issues, mainly some money and an off-the-field thing. So, yeah, it just made a lot of sense. And Beane, was kind of talking about running backs, and he said, well, Shady's going to have to bring it. He's going to have to this. And then if Gore beats him out and this, and it will have to, and he kind of like, oh, you'll have to what? You have to move on from him. You'll have to release him, or they'll try to move him on beforehand. And I would look, that's what I'm mainly looking for this offseason. The rest of this offseason, I'm mainly looking at if there's an injury somewhere around the league, or somewhere they could look to move him for something. And I don't know if it's going to be a lot, because I don't think his value is a lot right now. Everybody points to the offensive line being so porous. I don't know. I just think the money, the age, it all ties into him not being long for the roster, because this is the last year of his deal. They gave Yeldon a 2-year deal. I'm not saying he's a lock either, but I would say Gore, Perry, Singletary, and DeMarco are pretty much locks. That's 4. And then, keeping 4 tight ends, you keeping 8 linemen, 2, 3, you're going to have to rob Peter, pay Paul somewhere on the roster. So it's a lot of, TBD with this roster, to be determined. But that's why we're going to watch and really enjoy it. All right, Bills fans, have a great one. Take care. Enjoy your Friday. I'll speak to you again soon if anything else pops off, because a couple of interesting things did in the last 48 hours. So you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for watching, subscribing, commenting, however you choose to invest your time in me. I truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, as always. It can't express how much it means to me and how appreciative I am of it. And I'll always convey that to you in sincerity. So you guys have a great one. Go Bills.